Hi, I'm Casey, but most of you know me around the web as Cartoon12 or ToonGal12 here on YouTube, and as my username suggests, I love cartoons. Even as an adult, I still prefer animated movies and shows to live-action ones, and I also like listening to people's opinions of their favorite episodes, so I thought, why not make some top 10 lists of my own? I'd be interested to hear if anyone agrees or disagrees with my choices and see if people can point out some things that I might not have considered before. So for this top 10 list, I'm going to feature one of my favorite cartoon shows, SpongeBob Squarepants. Created by Steven Hillenburg, the show's about a sea sponge and his ocean friends, including Starfish Patrick, Squidward the Squid, his fast food boss Mr. Krabs, and his pet snail Gary, to name a few. Alright, let's make something very clear here. I'm fully aware that this show has gone downhill as of late. Most seem to agree that the first movie and anything before it was when the show was at its best and funniest, and I am in full agreement there. Modern SpongeBob, meaning anything after the movie, just doesn't do it for me. So I'd like to take you all back to the era that I grew up with. The era of the show when the characters weren't insensitive jerks and the jokes weren't gross and actually funny. This list is also going to be a bit different than usual, considering that this is a comedic show, so most of my choices are really just depending on how funny I thought the episode was. And everyone has different tastes, and that's okay. This isn't necessarily a best of list, it's my own personal favorites list, and whether you agree or disagree with my choices, I'd love to hear your feedback. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 10. Wet Painters. Watching this for the first time, this is definitely one of the most nerve-wracking episodes to sit through, but in a good way. In this, SpongeBob and Patrick are asked by Mr. Krabs to paint his house, and he warns them that there's going to be serious consequences if they get paint on any of his stuff. What follows is a tense but hilarious sequence as the duo tries to carefully paint around his stuff. Two of my favorite gags is the bit with the time cards and the giant paint bubble. Things then take a turn for the worse when they get a tiny paint drip on Mr. Krabs' most prized possession, his first earned dollar. For those of you who haven't seen the episode, this is one time I'm not going to spoil the ending. You'll just have to watch to find out. Number 9. Jellyfish Jam. As the narrator says at the end of this episode, wild animals can throw very wild parties. And SpongeBob learns this the hard way when he decides to bring home a wild jellyfish. I'm pretty sure everyone remembers this episode, mainly for the awesome techno dance that no doubt introduced an entire generation to dubstep. Things come to a head when the jellyfish invites all its friends to the house, and the party spirals out of control, leading SpongeBob to have to use their own music to lead them back to Jellyfish Fields like the Pied Piper. It's one funny gag after another with a great song that'll no doubt get stuck in your head for weeks. Number 8. The Idiot Box. I'm sure we all did this when we were kids. Ignore the fancy new toy you got just to play with the box. Granted, we didn't go through the trouble of ordering a big screen TV just to get said box, but you get my drift. This one really takes me back, spending hours playing and imagining all sorts of stuff with one simple box able to become anything you needed. Rugrats had an episode with a similar plot, but this one had the added hilarity of Squidward trying to figure out why and how a bunch of random sound effects keep coming from the box and not being able to get it to work for him. I guess it goes to show all it takes is a little imagination. Number 7. SpongeBob BC, aka Ugg. You know, I've never really been a fan of the Flintstones at all, which makes it weird that I like this episode. I guess it stems from the fact that since we're already familiar with the main characters and their habits, it's hilarious to go back in time and see their caveman ancestors and find out that even millions of years ago, some things never changed. And even with all the caveman gibberish, you can still understand what's going on. The best bits are definitely the gags with prehistoric Mr. Krabs, the 2001 Space Odyssey reference, the trio fighting over the discovery of fire, and the past versus future battle between Patchy and Polly. That's Patrick's voice actor playing the caveman in the catchy rap song at the end. And as most of you might know, Patchy is played by SpongeBob's voice actor Tom Kenny. Bottom line, this episode had my dad and I yelling "SpongeGar fwee fwee" at each other for a month. Number 6. The Krusty Krab training video. I'm sure most of you out there have a job or have had one. Ever had to sit through all those boring, dumb slideshows and videos when you were first hired, teaching you all about the store and the rules, how to deal with customers in emergency situations, complete with cheap effects, terrible jokes, and bad acting? Well, now imagine having an entire episode like that, except, shocker, it actually manages to be funny. I love how this doesn't have any plot or setup or lead into the video. They just drop you right into it, pretending that you, the viewer, just got hired at the Krusty Krab, and you get to see all sorts of behind-the-scenes hilarity at the restaurant we've all come to love. So the next time you go to work, just remember...
No employee wants to be a Squidward.
Number 5. Sleepy Time. Predating Inception by a few years, this was a pretty interesting setup in which SpongeBob accidentally falls out of his dream cloud and discovers he has the power to visit other people's dreams. It's sad they never revisited this concept at all because it was a pretty interesting way to develop the characters by seeing just what they exactly dream about. Who knew Gary spoke with a British accent? The two best parts are definitely the bits with Patrick and Plankton. But lesson learned, folks, if you're able to quantum leap into your friends' dreams, make sure you ask permission first. Number 4. The Graveyard Shift. If Wet Painters was suspenseful in a funny way, then this episode definitely takes the award for being most suspenseful in the creepy way. This is probably the closest the show's gotten to having a scary episode, and I was legitimately creeped out the first time I saw it. Both SpongeBob and Squidward are forced to work the night shift at the Krusty Krab.
At night.
So Squidward amuses himself by telling SpongeBob a scary story about a vengeful, ghostly fry cook called the Hash-Slinging Slasher. But things take a turn when the story he made up starts happening for real, and it makes you wonder if it's just coincidence or is there really something supernatural going on. This is another one that I'm not going to spoil the ending on. You'll just have to watch to find out who the ghost really is. Number 3. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 3. It's sad that Ernest Borgnine isn't with us anymore because it was always a treat whenever Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy showed up. I just love how SpongeBob and Patrick are casually best friends with a pair of superheroes. So much so that in this episode, and my favorite of all the Mermaid Man stories, the superheroes entrust them to watch the Mermalair while they take a vacation. And naturally, things go wrong when the duo accidentally unleashes the evil supervillain Man Ray. They then try to reform him and turn him to the side of good with hilarious results. Funniest part is definitely the bit with Patrick's wallet and the Orb of Confusion. Now why can't we punish all criminals with tickle belts? Number 2. Crabborg. SpongeBob meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers meets the Terminator. That's the best way to describe this hilarious episode in which SpongeBob stays up late watching horror movies and come the next day is convinced that Mr. Krabs is really an evil robot bent on taking over the world. One crazy coincidence after another keeps ramping up his fears until he even manages to convince Squidward. Now that is rare. It all leads up to the funniest interrogation scene ever that puts every crime drama to shame.
SpongeBob, you gotta ask him a question first. Oh yeah, what color is my underwear?
And my number 1 favorite episode of SpongeBob Squarepants is... Franken Doodles. As someone who loves art and drawing, I so badly wish this magic pencil were real. What do I mean? Well, it all starts when a fisherman accidentally drops his pencil into the ocean, and when SpongeBob and Patrick find it, they discover it can make any drawing come to life. Things start off innocent enough, but then take a turn for the creepy when SpongeBob makes a drawing of himself. Cue the strange and warped clone going on a rampage across Bikini Bottom, with our duo racing to stop him in a sequence of some of the most hilarious gags of the show. Playing them all would just constitute playing the entire episode, but my favorites include beating up Squidward, the hand sneaking into SpongeBob's house, erasing his butt crack, and the battle at the end, which actually ultimately leads to a happy ending, in which the Doodle finally escapes back to his 2D world on the paper. All in all, this is living proof that stories and art can take on a life of their own. Could also serve as an allegory for the show itself. Take care of your creations lest they turn ugly and overstay their welcome. Franken Doodle, a hilarious art lesson and my pick for my favorite episode. I'm Cartoon12 and I hope you enjoyed the countdown. I'll have more top 10 lists soon, so I'll see you all next time.